Thank you for joining us for another segment on thoughts on international business, marketing, and strategy. My name is Professor Michael Czinkota, and I'm here at Georgetown University in the McDonough School of Business. Our topic today is getting and keeping the international job. And in this discussion, I'm joined by Paul Kollmer-Dorsey, who's the Deputy General Counsel of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which is the federal U.S. agency which oversees all the civilian international broadcasting, for example, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio TV Marti, all these wonderful things. And it does so in 60 languages and with an audience of 175 million a week. But more importantly and to the point, Paul is an internationalist of the first hour. He joined me in working together at the time at the National Center for Export-Import Studies many moons ago at Georgetown, right, where he received his undergraduate degree in the School of Foreign Service. And afterwards, there was no looking back. He always did the international thing. So our key purpose here is today to hear from him. Why was he international? Why is he so international? What turns him on? And what are the great benefits to it? So what got you started in the international arena, Paul?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you so much for having me here today. It's a delight to be back at Georgetown and to reconnect with old friends. But to tell you the truth, when I was 15 years old, I idolized my Uncle Marwan, who was a Lebanese guy who I married my aunt, my father's sister. He spoke 5 languages. He was always traveling around. And when I grew up, I wanted to be like my Uncle Marwan. And so when I got out of high school, I tried to get into international studies, and I came to Georgetown, the School of Foreign Service, and studied international politics. And I always was intending to either join the Foreign Service or do something international. Then I started working with you, and you gave me my first big professional chance at the National Center for Export-Import Studies as a research analyst when I was in my junior year in college. I graduated, I went to law school, where I took the entire international curriculum. And then right immediately after law school, I moved to Japan for 3 years. At the time, there was an enormous outbound investment flow from Japan into the United States. And they really needed American lawyers to support the investments that they were doing. So I moved to Japan from 1988 to 1991, and that's what got me started, basically.
Now tell me, what made others want to hire you for international tasks? Because going to Japan is not
right
for everybody, but why did they want you there? Why did you want to be there?
Well, I think the key thing, when you're a young person, is to finish your studies and do a really good job. I mean, quite frankly, you just have to be in an international context and be a promising person, and you'll get to have an international career. But like, for example, when I moved to Japan, they were not looking at me because I was a Japan expert or because I was American or anything like that. They were looking for me because they had a lot of transactions that were being conducted in the United States, and they needed American lawyers to support those transactions. So I would say to any young people who are interested in an international career is to do really well at your studies and whatever that field of that field is, and then put yourself in an international context, whether it's moving to another country, working with a company that does international. Is active internationally, those types of things.
Did you experience any key challenges early on?
Oh, absolutely. The first challenge I think that every student feels is just one of self-awareness, self-knowledge, and then, in other words, a lot of people don't really know what they want to do. Which is totally understandable, because when you're a student, you know that you either like your studies or you don't like your studies, but you think you might want to do something, but you're not really sure. And until you actually try a particular profession or a particular job, you're not going to understand exactly what you want to do. So the key thing is to try to try a lot of different things and figure out what you're interested in.
Now, some say that we all dance to the same songs, we eat the same pizza, we watch the same movies. From your vantage point, is the world sort of becoming egalitarian and quite alike, or are there still substantial differences?
I think the world is wonderfully diverse. There is an increased communication. Communications technology is better now than it ever was. But what I believe is really important is the local context. After I lived in Japan, I moved back to the United States for 12 years, and then I moved to Holland for 4 years. And what I found in every place is that although the awareness of what's going on in the world is generally fairly good, that people enjoy their own countries, they enjoy their own cultures, and so the only other trend that I notice most is what I would call fusion, where parts of, say, the U.S. culture would be adopted or adapted into a local culture, and vice versa, and that's always interesting.
Talking about that fusion or U.S. culture, how has the world changed from your vantage point in terms of people's view of America, America's view of the world?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think that I remember when I was at Georgetown, I took Arabic for a couple of years, and I had an Egyptian professor. I wish I remembered his name because he was a fantastic guy. But he always said that everyone loves each other. He said every people in the world actually love each other. When they meet each other on the street, when you're meeting an individual, you kind of get along. You always have to get along. And so I've always found that no matter where I've gone in the world, I've always met great individuals and gotten along very well. Things can fall apart at the national level, at the government-to-government level, because governments represent interests that are beyond individuals. But I certainly don't feel anti-Americanism kind of on an individual level, quite the opposite. I think the United States has a very high standing in the world. And I think Americans' understanding of other cultures is growing as well, which is nice to see.
Now, many talk about the new social media and social connectivity. How do you see that influencing globalization and your type of work?
Well, social media and, well, let's just say, I'll just make it into technology, especially communications technology. And I think what that does is just facilitate, transactions. It's so much easier to imagine doing business across borders than it's ever been before. I've done a lot of transnational transactions, and with communications being what they are right now, Paris is an email away, and or Tokyo is an email away, or a telephone call away. So it's really not a problem to do very sophisticated transactions globally.
And as you look forward, is the world becoming more global, or is there a retrenchment?
Oh, it's absolutely becoming more global, and I think what I would like to see, and I believe this trend is correct, is where young people aren't afraid of borders, don't really see borders. They understand there are different countries, and they have to deal with local environments and local cultures, local laws, but they don't think of the world as I don't like them to think that it's exotic to go to another country. It's really not. It's really just getting on a plane and all of a sudden you're there.
So where's most of the action going to happen in the next decade? Is it in Asia, in Europe, in the Americas, in Africa?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, obviously, it's hard to say because everywhere I've gone, I've lived in Asia, and I've lived in Europe, and I've lived here. They've always been pretty active. From a communications point of view, some of the places that have been deemed to be developing countries in the past, such as Africa, are just exploding with economic activity and communications activity. Internet use, for example, in Africa, I think has increased something like 23,000% in the last few years. So I think there's going to be a lot of even more interesting international careers to be had.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul Kollmer-Dorsey. And thank you for joining us for this segment on international business, strategy, and marketing. I'm Michael Czinkota.